What's going on, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful evening. So, Papa's House has a new episode out called Wig, episode 8. And it begins with Damon Jr. He comes over to his Papa's house and he tells him that they're going to do a read along at his daughter Maya's school. So Papa comes out and he's like, "You had me at Maya." And Damon Jr. is like, "What in the world?" He doesn't want to embarrass his father, but he's, trying to understand why he has this wig on his head, right? So he gets down to it and he finds out that his best friend Leon has passed. And Damon Jr. is like, "Oh my goodness, Uncle Leon passed. Oh my gosh." And they start talking about grief and how tricky grief is and how neither one of them have cried in regards to losing someone that was very special. They were doing impersonations of him. He's like, Uncle Leon would take up for me and say, boy, you better be glad you have a daddy. I didn't have a daddy. While Damon Sr., he's like, well, listen, he used to tell me to beat your behind because you was too spoiled, that sort of thing. Just reminiscing on people. Sometimes I'll have something happen in my life, or I'll have a funny insider joke that I wish I could call my best friend who passed. My college roommate passed at 31, which is so young in the whole grand scheme of life. But anyway, so Dr. Ivy Reed comes over to shoot the podcast with Papa, and she's like, "What in the Al Sharpton?" and Damon Jr., he's like, "Listen, don't say anything about the hair." You know, he tells her about Leon, and she's a psychologist, so she's like, "Well, have either of you cried about it?" And they're like, "No, we process grief differently," and making all these excuses and whatnot. But that is interesting, right? Grief is something that, it definitely takes a toll on people, myself included. So anyway, Papa, he's feeling himself, he's feeling his hair. So he's like, listen, I'm on this dating app, he's looking at all these, he's like young tenderonis. He's like, I'm about to go out to a disco. And Junior, he's like, listen, you might have to get into a time machine for a disco, because he starts doing the robot. He's like, people have not gone to discos in years. So yeah. But anyway, Papa goes out, with the young lady in the left, and he's telling her, oh, well, I don't have kids, knowing he a whole grandfather out here. Oh, he's like, just trying to relive his youthful glory days. And she's like, oh, I like to go skydiving and riding in convertibles and all these different activities. And he's like, listen, you're doing a whole lot that could mess a brother's hair up, right? But anyway, they kiss and, they have a connection. Chemistry is there. So Papa is elated. He goes back. he, he goes into his son's closet. He puts on this extra young shirt. he's like, he's like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to see my date again. And, I might, get married and have kids. And, he's just moving super fast. Damon's like, listen, I'm older than she is. And and he's like, you like my shirt? Papa's asking his son, like, do you like my shirt? He's like, yeah, I should. It's my wife's. He's like, oh, he's like, that's why my belly button is out. He's like, I might get my belly button pierced. You think that's cool? Some guys do that, right? Damon Jr. is like, yeah, some guys, sure. Watching his father have a whole midlife identity crisis. Well, not even midlife, because Damon Sr. is what, 61, at least in the show. So it's past a midlife crisis. But anyway, so he goes out with his date again, and you know, he's more honest this time. He's like, listen, he's like, I do have kids. In fact, I'm a grandfather. And just telling her the truth about everything. The earring is fake and all this stuff is fake. And she's like, well, I don't care about any of that. And Then he comes clean about the hair and everything, and to the point where she's like, okay, I'm out of here, Grandpa. Meanwhile, when Nina Junior's wife found out about the wedding, she's like, oh, I'd love to plan it and all this stuff. And Dr. Ivy was in her feelings. She's like, what do you mean, traitor? I know Papa's not gonna marry this, whatever off the street or whatever off a dating app and this young chick that he doesn't even know. And I'm right here. And she's like, oh, you want some peanut butter with that jelly? Oh my goodness. So I think that they are building up the tension in the relationship to, you know, eventually Papa and Dr. Ivy Reed getting together. But when they're filming the podcast, she is talking about how healthy it is to cry and get your emotions out. So they're trying to make Papa cry by putting on a movie, Old Yeller. I don't know if you guys remember that with the dog. They're like, if you don't cry with Old Yeller, then there's something deeply wrong. So Papa's asleep during the movie. He wakes up. He's like, did the dog die yet? And they're like, what is going on with him? Um, they're trying to make Junior cry as well, right? So Junior, he's having a hard time processing the death of Leon, and he's like, oh, he was trying to muster it, which is ironic because Junior he talks about having gone to private school and his whole not his whole identity, but a good portion of it in this show is him, being like pro theater kid and very artistic. Um, and again, that mirrors his real life. But I believe I don't know if Damon went. I do know Marlon said that he went to the Performing Arts High School in New York. I hope that Damon had a chance to go as well, but I know Marlon talks about how he went with Omar Epps, and so that's how they got their start in acting back in high school, which is dope. That would be so amazing to have gone to that high school. But anyway, they're having a hard time, processing Leon's passing, and while they're doing the podcast, Papa pulls out the old Adidas, with the stripes and the hat, and he's like, "Listen, I'm gonna take it back for my friend," and he just dedicated that segment to his friend because it is hard once you start getting older and you start losing people. I was on Facebook the other day and it was somebody I went to school with, middle school with, and she passed, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like she was the sweetest girl. And I don't even know if she was married or had kids or anything, but just the fact that life is so short, like it's so fragile, and we really need to take care of each other and be there for one another. But that's how the episode ended, with him dedicating the song to. So he plays, it's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. And the shot that got me, I almost had to drop a thug tear, but I sucked it back in, was the frame that he had with his real life friend. And they were wearing, the same outfit that he has on now, with the Adidas jumpsuit and the hats to match, and, the Adidas shoes. You could tell it was in the 80s because he looked, completely younger. It was an old picture. He looked a lot like Damon Jr., of course. He's a spitting image of his daddy. But it was Damon Sr., and he said it was dedicated to his friend who had passed. And he told a story about how he was on a train tracks and he had a club foot. This is the club foot, I do know, is a true story. I'm not sure about the train track story, but he said that if it wasn't for his best friend Leon, who he mentions, he's like, I physically would not be here. He's like, everybody else left, but I was stuck, and so Leon stayed and like literally saved my life. And it's those types of friends, that those friendships are very rare and they're so precious. And so when someone in your life like that passes away, it really does affect you because, I mean, there's not a lot of people out there that are going to stick around with you during the hard times, to pull you out of, whatever situation, whether it's a train coming, literal or figuratively, you know, but Damon's never forgotten him, and so he dedicated this show to the memory of his friend who passed on. I thought that was really sweet. So I love this show. I know some people are like, "Oh, it's whatever, whatever." It's one of my favorite shows. Like it's up there with Abbott Elementary, My Wife and Kids. I was watching a clip of them online, and Tisha Campbell recently went on the Jennifer Hudson show, and she said, essentially how she snuck into the audition. But they just had such good chemistry. Damon Wayans is one of my favorite actors, and I'm so glad that he is carrying on this legacy and passing it on to his son. So, anyway, you guys let me know if you are watching. Let me know your thoughts about this show. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk with you in the next one. Take care, Aces. Bye.